Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most haunting missing person cases in the last several decades, the disappearance of 17-year-old Christopher Matthew Kerze. On April 20th, 1990, Christopher told his parents he wasn't feeling well and stayed home from school. Before the day was over, he had withdrawn $200 from his bank account, left behind a series of cryptic notes, driven more than 200 miles into the northern Minnesota, and seemingly vanished without trace. 35 years later, there are still no definitive answers. Many people first learned Christopher's name in 1993 when his photo appeared in Soul Asylum's iconic Runaway Train music video. The video brought national attention to dozens of missing children and young adults, and Christopher's case became one of the most memorable. While the video generated countless tips across the country, it ultimately did not solve Christopher's disappearance. So what really happened? Did Christopher intentionally disappear? Did he die in the remote Minnesota wilderness? Or is there another explanation that investigators have never been able to uncover? Tonight, Brian and I are going to walk through the known timeline, examine the evidence, discuss leading theories, and separate fact from speculation. As always, we encourage everyone in the chat to share your thoughts and theories, but let's keep this discussion respectful, especially for Christopher's family who are still searching for answers after all these years. If you're new to the channel, we'd appreciate you if you would hit the like button and subscribe and turn on your notifications. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here. I'm glad we're able to cover this case. This is a really interesting case, and I think this is one that, despite all of the different unknowns in this case, and there are many, for those of you that are listening or watching either live or later on YouTube, this is one we would love to hear what you think about this case, because if you are looking for any definitive answers in tonight's broadcast, you will be disappointed, but there are lots of questions for us to talk about. And I think this is a case that, I don't know, I got this feeling that this is one that can be solved, in the sense that I feel like there is resolution that is possible in this case.
It reminds me of the Brandon Swanson case.
Absolutely. Yep.
And especially, we'll get into this, but of how he more or less disappeared. I'll use that word. But also about of how it's a very complex search. And we'll get into that again. But this is not something that you can do with limited resources. And even if you have the resources, it's extremely challenging. So let's get into what we actually know about Christopher.
Yep.
We know that he was 17 years old, and he lives in Minnesota. And from all accounts, he's an excellent student. He's on the National Merit Honor Society. His friends and family describe him as intelligent, quiet, responsible. He's into computers, camping. He's kind of an outdoors guy, and he also likes to read. And we do not hear any reports of any drug activity, or any type of behavioral problems. He seems like a mild-mannered, good student.
Yeah, close with his family, doing really well in school, doing a lot better in high school than either of us did. And seems to be someone who's generally kind of liked. He doesn't really fit the profile when we talk about people that go missing, of someone who would obviously, there's not this obvious problem at home or problematic relationship that's just easily people are aware of on the surface.
And that's where I would go to with especially a teenager, is that he's a got problems in school, he's got a history of drug abuse, or there's
Right.
some type of emotional outburst that caused him to run away from home.
Right.
But no one is, and this has been a while. This has been since
Right.
1990. People are still
1990.
saying the same thing, that no, he was he liked to ski, he liked to hike, and we're not seeing any of that. So it makes it more
He's close to his parents. Yeah. I mean, even in this case, there are some notes that we'll talk about later in this tonight that kind of come into as one of the facts in this case. And something I was thinking about was just to leave a note, for instance, to your parents implies that you care. You're trying to communicate. Right.
right. Well, let's
So
get into that. So we know
yeah.
that on the morning of Friday, April 20th, 1990,
Yep.
and this is one of the few facts that we know about the case, is that Christopher tells his parents that he has a severe headache and he
Yep.
wants to stay home from school. And again, he's a good student. This isn't
Right.
like he's always trying to find an excuse not to go to school. So his parents are like, okay, you're going to stay at home.
And his father's on a business trip during this day. We should point that out too. His father's on a business trip and he is telling his mother he has this headache you mentioned. Yep.
Right. So dad's gone. Mom believes that he has good intentions, that he's legitimately sick, and his parents or his mom leaves for work. And that becomes the last known sighting of Christopher.
Yes. She gives him some Tylenol and says, "We'll see you after I get off of work." And that's about it. That's the last 100% confirmed sighting we have of Christopher. This April 20th, 1990, this Friday that he is staying home. He doesn't feel well. And as you mentioned, he is a National Honor Society student. Look, he tells you he doesn't feel well and he doesn't feel like going to school. He's someone who obviously excels in school. So you take their word for it.
And so the other facts that we know happened is
Yes.
that we assume that he's the person that took the family's blue Dodge Caravan.
Yep. A
I say that
1988 Dodge
because
Caravan.
no
Yep.
one actually saw him in the vehicle, but
Right.
we assume that he took it. We also know that he withdrew $200 from his savings account
Yep.
around that same time, and
Mhm.
that he also leaves this note. And
Mhm.
it simply says, "Mom, something important came up, back by 6," and then in parentheses, "unless I get lost." And he underlines the lost 2
Mhm.
times.
And I think this note is significant because there are a few notes that are going to pop up in this case. This is the one note that all kind of law enforcement who have worked this case have concluded that this is authentic, right? This note that you said, "Mom, something important came up and feeling somewhat better, back by 6, unless I get lost." Like you said, underlining lost. Love, Chris. That's an authentic. They've accepted that's an authentic note, so we're going to accept that
Right.
as authentic. I'm assuming as well.
And I wanna remind people, this is
Mhm.
1990.
Yeah.
So this is before cell phones, GPS. If you were trying to go to a location that you did not know, you would have to have a map, or you would
Yeah.
have to know how to get there, or you would have to stop and ask for the directions. Home computers were not even a thing around then, and
Sure.
certainly MapQuest had not come along, which came along more or less in the I believe around the 2000s, maybe late 1990s. But
Mhm.
so his option would be a map, him knowing where he's going, or someone actually giving him verbal directions. And I
And
say that because
Mhm.
is this something that the "unless I get lost" part, is this a he
Mhm.
really does have a location that he's traveling to? Is
Mhm.
this kind of a thing that he's telling his parents because he knows that he's gonna be gone, and it's almost a passive aggressive way
Mhm.
to be gone without them worrying as much? Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. When you say passive aggressive, that was the first thought I had because unless I get lost, it's not that. Let's think about what this letter doesn't say. Letter doesn't say, "I've been dealing with all kinds of things that I've been struggling with. I'm really sorry what I'm about to do." or I'm really sorry, I'm going to
Right.
really miss you, or I love you, or whatever else. It's back by 6 unless I get lost. And so if we know, and we'll talk about the circumstances of his disappearance in a moment, I'm sure, but we do know that he does disappear. And so if this is intentional in any way, whether it's a runaway or a suicide or however you ultimately read this case, the idea of back by 6 unless I get lost, it is a passively written letter. It doesn't state what he's doing, but just providing, I mean, it's creating mystery. And I'm wondering, is this letter the reason why this case is such a mystery? Does the passive aggressive quality of this letter, does it actually kind of create the mystery itself? Because this is one of the facts that everyone assumes to be true.
Right. And you know what's interesting about this letter too is that one of the pieces that we do not have is we do
Mhm,
not know of when he actually left his house. And the reason why that's so important is because
mhm.
if he's leaving, let's say he left right in the morning, he would have the entire day to travel.
That's true.
So he could make it to maybe even another state, as opposed to, was he planning on leaving for 45 minutes? Was he going to a friend's house that he didn't want his parents to know about, or a girlfriend, or whoever? We
I'm
don't know.
assu I'm assuming the withdrawal from his savings accounts, the $200 you reference, it would have been logged in the banking system. When did that transaction occur? Right? Even during the 1990s, right? Like, so I am curious about when he went to engage in that transaction. You know, somewhere in the after, a lot of media coverage describe it as sometime that afternoon, but I haven't seen an exact time yet. If anyone's watching or listening to this now and knows of that exact time, I would love to hear it.
And I don't think that's been made public. I didn't see it either. I just saw the same references, but
Mhm.
we do know that he's not heard from after that. And
Sure.
we don't get another, I'll say, clue until April 21st.
So next
A
day.
Yeah, the next day, a second handwritten letter arrives, and it's postmarked from Duluth, Minnesota.
Mhm.
And in the letter, Christopher, if it is Christopher,
Right.
the author says he lied about being sick. He doesn't know exactly where he is going. He intends to end his life, and he apologizes to everyone.
Something that interests me about that is it almost seems like the second letter, in these two letters that come a day apart. And I know there is at least some debate about the authenticity of that letter. I do believe that most investigators that worked this case early on believe that letter to be genuine. And I think it sounds likely genuine if that letter was written, in the sense that it doesn't feel like there would have been time to generate enough media coverage for some random person to decide that they're going to pull off a hoax, right? Like, oh, this
Right.
person, there's this coverage of this person that just vanished yesterday. You know what sounds like a good idea? I'll write a letter right now, or like the next day. Like, that doesn't seem especially likely to me, right? Um, but what's weird about it is that the second letter was not the first.
Right. Well, you know what makes sense about that, though?
Mhm,
If his intent was to get out of the area and
mhm.
not have his parents find him, maybe that first letter was to stall his parents and the authorities from looking. And then the second letter was, okay, he's got far away from home,
Uh-huh.
that he can send that letter and go to wherever he's going to go to and do whatever he's going to do. And we also know around that time that that's when they find out that he had taken a 20 gauge Mossenberg shotgun with him. But allegedly, he didn't bring any shells with him.
So there's no shells, right? And this is one of the things that's complicated for those listening. I would love to hear your thoughts about this as well. But we have this. So we have this letter that says, "In case I get lost," underline, focus on lost. And then the next day, alluding to this idea that there was, self harm involved in this, and there's a gun missing, but I'm not taking any ammunition. I think one of the things that makes this case complicated is that for everything that seems to point in one direction, there's something else that at least creates a question mark. Not necessarily an alternative theory, but a question mark that makes it a little bit less than 100%.
Well, and this is the thing about the shotgun is
Mm-hmm.
if they're a family that shoots a lot or hunts, I would I would have some doubts that they've accounted for every shotgun shell in that house.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is they're in Duluth, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been to
Yes.
Duluth, Minnesota, but I bet that there's a lot of sporting stores, and I bet that it's common to buy shotgun shells. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
that's a 20 gauge shotgun shell is very common. And even though, yes, he's not 18, he
Uh-huh.
shouldn't be allowed to buy them. I would, this is just a guess. I would bet that they're probably not as strict around there if that is part of their culture.
Right. No, I think that that's probably right. And so, I mean, we're left with, we know he leaves his house if the first letter's authentic. The question is, where is he going and why is he going there? So we have this car found. We know the day before this, he has withdrawn $200 from his bank account. So, I mean, one of the questions I had, if he is planning to kill himself, why take the $200? Why is that needed? Is it just was it, travel to an indeterminate spot that he had not, he was going to need some spending money traveling to an indeterminate
Right.
spot where there was going to be some self-harm or kind of what, but it's a interesting kind of detail in all this, and why the second letter too, unless like you said that the first letter created, was an effort to just quell initial panic and buy himself time.
And that's what's interesting about this case is there are so many theories. And again, a lot of this is speculation because we've got these core facts, but
Mhm.
nothing is concrete.
Yeah.
And even the other piece that we know is the next day, so April 22nd,
Mhm.
the Dodge Caravan is discovered abandoned.
Yes.
So, from like I was saying before, with my theory, if this first note was to buy him time, that actually does end up working out for him because
Mhm.
it's the vehicle isn't found until 2 days later. And it, the van is found about 200 miles north of Egan near Grand Rapids, Minnesota,
Yeah.
off Highway 38. And inside the van,
And that's
investigators find another note.
well, and this is also in the direction of where his grandparents lived. His
Right.
grandparents lived in Grand Rapids. Something I was going to ask you about, just as an important context for this, just from a law enforcement perspective, when you're thinking about a missing persons case like this, I've heard people say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the last known confirmed, location of someone that's missing is often treated like a crime scene. When he initially goes missing from his house, that scene, the note, and that whole area is really important. When the Dodge Caravan is found, does the Dodge Caravan in that area, does that essentially become the new crime scene or the way you would treat it? Or
Yes, but and this depends on age. So a
Mhm.
lot of times with younger kids, the first thing that you want to do, and you want to make this a habit anyway, is actually search the house that they are missing in.
Mhm.
Because especially with younger children, you'll find them in the house or surrounding outbuildings.
Mhm.
And so you do kind of the same thing where you lock it down, and we do that through consent with the owner, and we will walk through the house. You're opening up closet doors looking for people. You're not pulling out drawers or anything. And then the other thing you would want to do, especially with teenagers, is okay, can I see their room? And nowadays we try to see if they've got social media.
Mhm.
Um, and then it is trying to make any contact with people that are close to them and start doing a digital canvas, if you want to call it
Mhm.
that, where you're going through as many contacts as you can and letting them know, like, hey, this person isn't in trouble. We just need to make sure they're safe.
Right.
And then you're doing a physical canvas of that neighborhood too, to see if there's any witness information or people have cameras.
Yeah.
In 1990, this would be, of course, just, I don't know if they did anything at the house. We
Mhm.
do know that when they find the vehicle, they get search dogs
Mhm.
and they start tracking, because I'm assuming that they're thinking, and this is just an assumption, that maybe he's harming himself
Mhm.
in the woods somewhere near there.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes a Brandon Swanson case, in my opinion.
Right.
And for those that are not familiar with Brandon Swanson, he was a teenager as well that wrecked his car after leaving a friend's house, traveling some back roads. We know that he tried to walk to the town and he's kind of cutting through some fields. And at one point, he yells, "Oh shit," and
Mhm.
falls in some water. And it's believed, and I say this believed because his body has not been recovered,
Mhm.
that he actually walked about 8 to 12 miles
Mhm.
and then expired. And but the in that case, which I would like to know in this case, if this is true, with
Mhm.
that case, they focused around the vehicle because they did not think that he would have gone that far.
Yeah.
I wonder with this case, again, it's easy to sit here in a nice chair and on TV saying these things, but I wonder if how far they tracked out. I know the dog lost a scent.
Right. I think like
And
about a mile away, right? Was it, or was it less than
right,
that?
which
Mhm.
if you're just going a mile, that you think about this is a 17-year-old kid that's used to
Right.
hiking, he's skiing, he's used to the outdoors. I don't know what clothing he was wearing,
Right.
but he could have gone in a lot of directions, and you don't know of what type of timeline he has, like how long has he been walking if he does
Mhm.
walk.
Yeah.
Uh, so it becomes a very complex and difficult task for law enforcement. And these are very hard. It is hard to find a body. People
Right.
think it's easy. It's difficult.
And the Brandon Swanson case was also a Minnesota case, which is also makes it a good
Right.
point of comparison. And we're talking about a state like Minnesota. We're talking about these areas that are very densely rural,
Right.
and where it's still very easy to go out, and unless if it's not an area that's highly trafficked, it's going to be very, very difficult to find someone. Maybe not the best comparison, but I'm thinking about the Gretchen Fleming case recently. When they recently found her in West Virginia. West Virginia is also a very rural state, which is why I make the comparison. It was years before she was found, and it was a squirrel hunter who happened to kind of come across her body, and it was just one of those things by chance. And I just wonder, and there were a lot of searches for her, and I wonder when we're dealing with these rural areas with difficult terrain and dense forest, if this becomes a really difficult, it becomes a very logistically complicated undertaking to really do a search, and
Right.
it requires people with not just people acting with really good intentions. I think the people who work this case really, really do care about this case and would love to have this solved. We had a detective reach out when we were doing this episode and responded back within 24 hours. So that's not people that are indifferent, right?
Right.
That are interested in anything that's there. I just think it becomes logistically very, very complicated, particularly for a smaller department.
And I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again just to get some perspective.
Mhm.
When we looked for a victim that had been murdered, and we knew he had been murdered, and it was in Emporia, Virginia, which is very rural as well. And we had a lot of we had maybe 50 guys. We had the cell phone locations of where the suspect had gone,
Mhm.
we presume with the body. And so we had all this, but it was farmland and woods. And you're going in these woods, and yes, you've got essentially a dot on a map of where that cell phone was and how long it was there. So we're searching these areas.
Mhm.
And we started that morning, early in the morning, and we didn't find them until late that afternoon, and that's with
Mhm.
technology. And the only reason we found them is because we were knocking on doors, and a guy in a trailer that was just, on a large plot of land said that he saw some vultures in a field behind his house.
Mhm.
And then we went over there, and sure enough, the body was like in a brush pile.
Mhm.
But that is the type of undertaking that you're looking at. Is It takes an incredible amount of officers, a lot of
Mhm.
luck,
Mhm.
and yeah, again, we this could take months and months, even if you knew the direction of where he's going, especially in Minnesota, where you not only have to deal with.
Mhm.
I know that this was in April,
Mhm.
but when you start to get snow around there too, then the
Yeah.
task even becomes almost impossible unless you just run across that body, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think that before we're talking about 1990, we're talking about pre kind of cell phone data to ping closer to a location. And I see the comment about the dogs. Something, yeah, excellent. Yeah. So something interesting about this, if you go back and listen to the other episode we did too after tonight with or the camera did with the Brandon Swanson episode, he had Jeff Hasse, who was the actual who was the lead search manager for Brandon Swanson as a guest on his show that night. And he talks about just the complexity of using dogs and the kind of like I believe like the kinds of breaks that they need and other types is like
Right.
using the interactions with the dogs are like a very complicated thing that also has to be managed too, to this person's point.
Yeah, I mean, the dogs can only go so long, and
Right.
the I think just people underestimate how far people
Right.
can go, and we don't know of what mental state Christopher is in.
Yeah.
Did he have a breakdown with this happen? Because when we go back and look at this case, you've got a 17-year-old kid
Mhm.
that on the surface is not having any problems, and then
Right.
all of a sudden he's gone and presumably sending you letters about ending his life.
Right.
So what is that? Is that a mental thing? Is that something he's been holding in? We don't know.
Right. So there's two choices here, right? Like he's either in that immediate area or he's not in that immediate area. That's like simplifying it, right? But neither of those are good choices because if he's in the immediate area, this is April. This is not the winter. And so it's not that he's dealing with sub-zero temperatures at this time of year. He could conceivably, someone in good shape who's used to outdoor stuff, go a long distance, right?
Right.
Your search race is going to be really big. But now let's just say hypothetically, and I don't think there's any there's no substantial evidence for this, but let's just say hypothetically, he's not somewhere near that car. Well, where do you look? You don't have any like the search radius is too big at that point.
Right. Well, the case goes dead at that point,
Right.
and
Right.
then 6 months later is when it starts to get really strange.
Yes.
Christopher's parents began receiving phone calls, and a lot of the calls, they can hear background noise like someone's at a party. The caller never speaks, and they immediately hang up. And Christopher's friend, or his best friend, is reporting the same type of calls.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so his mother believes that this is Christopher, but the police can
Mhm.
never prove this.
Mhm. I think these are the ones when we're thinking about. I know there's different debates about like which notes are authentic or not authentic, and there's different notes that will pop up at different points in this case. This seems like the police have always, I think my understanding is, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong on this because I'm not an expert in this case, um but my understanding is that law enforcement has generally treated these phone calls as a hoax. And that makes sense to me because we're 6 months after the fact. It's a sick joke.
Right.
I don't really know what the joke is, but, like kids did we're in 1990. Think about for those of you that are our age, think about, this is still a time when prank phone calls happen.
Right.
So, um, I think it makes sense. I think the letter that both left the day of and the one that's postmarked and arrives the day of, that seems too soon to be a hoax. You would have to have so much information. Like it is too quick. 1990 communication didn't happen that quickly. So those seem authentic, but they don't necessarily lead us to an easy answer. But these other kind of prank calls, they're very disturbing because you think about what the family must have been going through during this time of just wondering this person they were really close to who's gone. It's a really sick thing to do. And you just wonder what was, I'm imagining this was probably someone younger who did this. You're hearing because they're not speaking, it's just the background party noise. What I'm imagining in my mind is that people having a kind of sleepover, kind of something they think on the lark is like a funny idea that's really not. They're doing this, but they're also don't feel like they can actually say anything. They get frozen when someone picks up the other line, you know?
And I agree. And I don't put a lot of weight behind him either. And it doesn't, I feel like that if he's got a pattern of sending letters, then why didn't he just send in our letter?
Right. Well, one of the things that no, exactly. It's a phone call. And also we're back to this whole thing of if it's a phone call, why not say anything? But then
Right.
again, I mean, if I'm just playing devil's advocate with the first letter, I mean, there's the whole thing of in case I get lost, underlined twice, like there is something passive about those letters too. I mean, I was thinking about some of our conversations we had with Julia Cali, who's a FBI profiler. It would be really interesting to have someone who is a forensic linguist who this is their area of expertise. Really look at these letters they believe are authentic and see if there's anything else maybe that we've missed. In this conversation, because there is something really. Those are the main clues here.
And that would be something that they could look at the handwriting samples and do comparisons to see if they came from the same author. I
Right.
think
I mean, the good thing about the 1990s would be most of his homework assignments and things at school would be handwritten. So we should have a plenty of reference points
right.
in that. So, um, yeah. So these letters are weird. And I've seen some interviews with the family. And I think the part that's the most sad to me about that entire thing is that these phone calls, at least in one interview I kind of saw leading up to, tonight, the family had mentioned that they kind of like to think that these calls were actually him, and it gives them some hope that maybe he's out there somewhere, still alive.
I know, and that's the cruel part about it. And I certainly do not know if he is dead or alive.
Mhm.
Maybe he'll pop up one day. Who knows? But I don't think that we can have a lot of hope in that,
Mhm.
to be honest. And after that, too, the case goes cold again. And in 1993, that is when Soul Asylum comes out with Runaway Train, and they were looking to do a music video. And for the American version, they wanted to do something that was helping people. And
Yeah.
so they had this idea to feature missing kids and missing people.
It's a brilliant idea, actually. I mean, I think about, I mean, you remember Soul Asylum. I remember we had
Oh, I bought
I
the
remember
album.
we
Yeah,
had
I've
yeah,
got
we
it at
had
the house.
we had that album. So it was
Probably listened to that 1,000 times too. And I remember vividly that video because it came
uh-huh.
on MTV
Uh-huh.
with I forgot the show that they would play the videos on, but yeah, I've seen that show or that video thousands of times. And so when this came up, I was like, oh, that's the kid from the video.
And what's so interesting, I think, about that, even being like featured in a video, what Soul Asylum was doing with that. If you think about the 1980s and the 1990s, it's fascinating to me now from the perspective of 2026 that there is this period where, I mean, we have we have missing exploited children databases, and there's multiple large nonprofits that will catalog and put these things out there. But I feel like I don't really run into them quite as much in a high profile way. We get Amber Alerts, we get like
Right.
little things like mentions in state and your local or regional coverage. But what's really interesting to me is that this was a period in which, whether it's the children who are missing who are on milk cartons, or whether the Johnny Ghosh or people like that, or whether it's people being featured in these music videos, there's this moment where like artists or through like different forms of mass communication, there's this idea that you can kind of contribute to finding these different people. Whereas I feel like now we are so connected digitally that we have access to more information, but these names of kids that are missing person cases in different states, I feel like I know less of them than I did when I was growing up. And
Right. And that's kind of the good and bad part about it, is that there's if you're on social media and you follow these channels with missing kids,
Mhm.
it's like one a day. And so it's hard to focus on one case. But I'm going to give
Right.
you a mind blowing fact about this song that I
Okay.
bet you didn't even think of.
What's that?
What's the first line of the song?
Let's see. Runaway train.
No.
What what is it?
Call you up in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh my
You know
God.
how
Yeah.
I was thinking about that today, and I was like, wow, that's eerie,
That
because
yeah.
this song came out after the whole phone call thing.
I wonder if they knew about that. Was that well? I wonder how well
No,
publicized that
because the
was.
song was already
Yeah.
written.
Song was that's interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think about, but if we consider some of these other cases, like from the 80s and 90s, and I'm not going to go on to a long tangent about this, but there were a lot of different there were other cases where people would receive these weird phone calls or things that were strange hoaxes. Like I think about like with the Johnny Ghosh case, like the communications of like, oh, he was sold off and trafficked by this cult or whatever. Like there's like weird communications in many of these cases that like kind of come about during this time. And but yeah, call you up in the middle of the night. That's right. That's eerie thinking about it now.
Yeah. I was just playing the song in my head. Obviously, we can't play it here because copyright, it'll get pulled.
Right.
But
Unless Soul
yeah,
Asylum is watching and they want to give us
yeah.
the right
I
to
would
play this, we'd be happy to
continue
do
the
this
entire
again.
thing, but yeah, then I'd probably get
Yeah.
banned from YouTube because my voice is so bad. But yeah, I think that brought some attention back to the case, but ultimately it doesn't lead to anything. But
Yeah.
then in 2004,
Yeah.
the Egan police receive an anonymous letter, and it states that investigators should stop looking because Christopher will return, quote, when he is ready.
I would love to know who the asshole was who wrote this letter too.
Right. And the
This is
police
like one of
believe
the
that this is a hoax. But you
right.
know what's weird about all this? It's like, why are you writing about a case that is 24 years old? Like, why are
Right.
you
Yes.
I don't know if a documentary or something came out
Yeah, right.
in that.
And from Seattle. We know it was sent from Seattle. We know it was sent
Right.
from Seattle, and you're thinking like it's not like you could imagine that some of these cases would be subject to hoaxes that were getting like a ton of national attention or were always on the media. Of course, like detectives are like sifting through like fake leads and stuff. But it's like this case did not get that kind of attention
Right.
nationwide by 2004. And the idea then that someone would think like, what is I mean, I feel the same way about the phone calls, but even more so about the lead in 2004. Like, what is the like? What's the mindset of what you're making a joke that no one's going to get? Like it's just kind of you're not making it a joke about a case that like everyone knows, and you're doing it from another state, and you're sending it to the police department. So you've committed a crime. Like
But you know
what
what?
are you
People do
doing?
that nowadays too. We were talking about Nancy Guthrie last night, and the
Yeah.
FBI just arrested one of the assholes that was doing the ransom letters that were bogus.
Yeah, like that's so crazy. I would love to have some of these people on one time to know like what is the thought process? Like I don't understand what where is the gratification or joke in any of that? It's
Well, and
such a
how do you
weird
think
thing.
that's a good idea?
Right.
And especially, you think you're gonna get away with that.
Right. I think there's a better chance of getting away with that in 2004 than there is now.
Right,
And
like the,
so,
uh, prank phone calls, we
mhm,
did those all the time when we were young too.
yeah.
That was kind of the thing. Y
But we
Adam
weren't calling people
Sandler.
whose children were missing, but we just for the
Right,
record,
right,
right?
right,
Like
right.
this was like
Yeah,
we were calling like, the people down the road and like
right,
saying just
or like a
stupid
Pizza
things
Hut or something, and
or a
yeah.
random number, not just like, oh, it'd be a funny call. They call the parents of this missing child. It's like, what the hell are you
Yes,
thinking? You like you monster. Like
right.
what is that? That's not funny. I can't imagine who would think that would be funny at any age. And it's and I feel terrible for the parents. Like, oh, that's not funny at all because this did in a strange way give them a kind of hope that maybe he is out there alive. And the weird thing about this case is that there's nothing to suggest that he is alive, but the circumstances have collided in such a way that it feels like it's going to be very difficult to I mean, they're still this case is still open and active. So in the lead up for today, I emailed Detective Angela Casey, who is assigned to this case, and they point out that they're still looking and they hope to. This is open and active case, and they're interested in hearing any and all leads, big or small, kind of surrounding this case. If you or anyone have anything about this case, they want to know about it. Send it to us. Send it directly to them. Um, but I just kept wondering, like, if this is a missing persons case still, it feels like the way this gets solved, and we're assuming that he is likely deceased at this point, I think. If that's the scenario that we're operating under, it I'm not sure how it gets solved, except that someone either accidentally stumbles across his body or there is some kind of concerted search. But at this point, I'm wondering if it's going to be really difficult.
Well, the police, like you're saying, they're continuing to investigate. In 2016, they actually do an
Mhm.
age progression photo,
Yeah.
which I should have put up, but I didn't. And so and that's when the family again appeals for information.
Uh huh.
And of course, nothing kind of comes about it. But like you're saying, they're still working this case as an active investigation. I think that what you were saying about if they were going to do a search of an
Hmm.
area of a, I mean, you're looking for, honestly, if you had that shotgun with him
Yeah.
or some type of metal, maybe you can pick that up with a metal detector. But you're
Yeah.
talking about doing line searches for probably miles and miles, which when you're doing a line search, you're standing like shoulder to shoulder with someone looking for. So it just becomes kind of that not practical. I hate to say it that way,
Hmm.
but the solution and the amount of resources, it's just
Right.
like with Brandon Swanson, where yes, you've got a lot of people that want to find him. You've got people that have volunteered thousands of hours to try to find his remains. They
Right.
still haven't been able to find him. They think that they've got a grid
Uh huh.
that his bones would be in, but y you're looking at best case, maybe getting a cell phone battery
Right.
or bone fragments, because in his case, that was a field that he was near. And so you're not only looking at weather and predation, but you're
Mhm.
also looking at farming equipment.
And in his case, is difficult as that search is, and I think that Jeff mentioned that, yeah, after there's comment after 36 years, I think it'll be hard to find anything. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And one of the things I think that's hard with the Brandon Swanson case, though, is that I think, as Jeff mentioned when he was on your show, that they have groups that Jeff is retired now, and so he's no longer actively kind of out there in the same way. I think that's what he said, but there are people who are going out there fairly regularly and searching that grid that they plotted out to this day. And what I'm wondering is, as vast and as complicated as the Brandon Swanson search was, it seemed like they have a more defined area of where he's likely at than what we're working with in this case.
Right. In this case, we don't have all the knowledge of this case. We
Right.
have what is publicly reported, but I do not think from a practical standpoint
Uh-huh.
that unless they had a witness that saw him in a particular area, I would doubt that they would have any more than what was reported, which is where that vehicle is and where those dogs ended their track at.
And this is
And
where it becomes complicated, though, because you talk about the witness. There was a witness who reported giving a hitchhiker that resembled Christopher a ride toward Duluth, but police have said they've never been able to verify that was actually him. And so it's like one of the, and what does that mean? Someone who looked like him, like someone
right.
who's like 5'10" and I can't remember he was, I think, around like 5'10", 135 pounds or something to that effect.
But if
Um,
you've got a vehicle and you've got
right,
$200 and this is 1990 where
right,
gasoline is under $1,
right.
you
I
can
mean,
go along.
$200 is that's an airline ticket if you really wanted to.
Right.
Yeah. Um,
So I just
And that's one of the things that the only that I think that's one of the things that creates at least some doubt with this. If there was no bank transaction like with this, I feel like 100% you would just say that this was given the two notes that are there, that they're working under assumption or authentic. This is likely, and I still think that's the case, likely a kind of case of self-harm that's somewhere around in the vicinity of where that car was. And it doesn't have to be too many miles to make it really difficult in tough terrain to find. But I do wonder if it's a combination of like that, that um, the withdrawal from the bank account or even this unconfirmed sighting, is that what creates, it's not reasonable doubt, but does it create some doubt where you just wonder about the possibility? And does that wonder, is that really about what people hope is just true? Like, we hope these age progression photos stuff that he's doing okay and living his life. But I think what people don't necessarily realize, there have been cases where this happened. There was a case just this past year where there was a woman who left her family. She had disappeared, and then she just started over and had been living a separate life, and the
in
police
North Carolina,
in
yeah.
North Carolina. Yes, you know the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible. I'm not saying it has never ever happened. In fact, I was shocked when I saw that case. Like, wow, that actually, there are people who are not deceased who actually disappeared for so long and could evade any attention, and then somehow pop up and they're alive and well, and it was voluntary. Um,
Well, this one wasn't voluntary, but another one was
yeah,
Elizabeth Smart,
that's true. Yeah.
where, you know, and so I do think that it happens, but I also don't see why you would take a shotgun with you
Right.
and you're sending these notes if you're not intending to harm yourself.
No, that's exactly right. I think it's like, I mean, it's similar to the case we have with the Travis Turner in that way. I mean, it's a terrible comparison because this kid, like, compared this kid to this coach who was, you know, um, involved in kind of child pornography and stuff. But this coach in Virginia who the U.S. Marshals have been looking for, who the Virginia State Police have been looking for. They've done organized, detailed searches with multiple agencies, with helicopters and everything else. And he left his house, by all accounts, picked up a pistol with him, walked into the woods. Many people have worked under the assumption he likely committed suicide because this occurred shortly before an arrest warrant was issued for him, but
Right.
they still haven't found him. Right. And so, because they haven't found him, lots of people, after a certain period of time, people just start wondering. And in that case, too, there's no reason to believe he's alive, but people say, well, maybe he had people helping him. Maybe he's started over a new life. And like starting over a life in this day and age is incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah, and I think that if you're 17 years old
Right.
and you've got $200, yeah, $200 is a good amount of money for travel in that time, but it is not the type that you've got enough to start a new life unless you're homeless.
And it wasn't all the money in his savings account either. And they did, I did see confirmed in one of the articles that there's never been any other movement in his savings account. So there's that.
Right, which would go to the same point of he took just enough to cover his expenses for whatever he's going to do.
Right.
Well, I'm hoping that, you know what, maybe he'll pop up one day. I don't think it's likely, but regardless, it is good that detectives in this case are continuing to work it, and I feel for the family. I mean,
Right.
this is not a good ending either way, but unfortunately, these things happen, and hopefully the family will get closure one day.
Mhm.
It's just, gosh, that's got to be so hard just not knowing.
In the Brandon Swanson case, there's a lot of people like these different nonprofits and groups that are like out there always searching to this day.
Right.
And one of the things that Detective Angela Casey, who's the missing persons detective who's currently assigned to the case right now in Minnesota, when we communicated via her by email, something that she said was, I appreciate you kind of sharing his story. She said something to that effect. I'm not
Right.
exactly quoting. And something I was struck by that was just that this is a case that, while it might pop up occasionally in social media, has not really gotten significant, consistent coverage. And I just wonder, there's not groups and people out there constantly searching those areas, looking in the same way they are for Brandon Swanson. So, it would be nice if there could be it would be if all of these cases could receive some attention from groups who have the resources and skills to be able to kind of help in whatever way they can.
Yeah, and if you do have information, please come forward. And I know that they'll take anything that they can at this point.
Mhm,
Um, but I think that you're right. And one of the things that we've said several times on the show is that people die twice, once
mhm.
during their physical death and then once when they're forgotten. And that is one of the goals here, is to make sure these people aren't forgotten. This was, at the end of the day, he's a 17-year-old kid
Mhm.
who had a bright future. He had a loving family and was giving back to this world with his kindness and his talents, and he shouldn't be forgotten.
Yeah, and I think when we retell these stories, we encourage other people to share these stories. We encourage other people to contribute in any way they can or contribute leads. It's really just about saying this person's life matters, and and it's a terrible thing that his family's had to negotiate all these years. And I think even if resolution in this case is not what anyone hopes to be true, I think that some answers are better than nothing. But in the interim time, all we can say is that, you know, really sorry that this has happened. And that if anyone has the information, certainly come forward. And in the meantime, reminding people that there are people close to him and that cared about him that have been impacted to this day. because of his disappearance. And that matters. And we should talk about this case like we would any of these others that get more attention.
Right, absolutely. This is one that people need to continue to talk about. And even if there's not a resolution, it's important to remember his name. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on again. Do you
Yeah.
want to tell us about another case that is not solved, Virginia Olson and our book of Murder on Campus, the professor, the cop in North Carolina's most notorious cold case?
Yeah, so this was out from Wild Blue Press from January 2025. Sorry, I got tongue tied for a moment. This is about the only murder that has happened in the history of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, my alma mater. And this was the investigation that Cameron and I did into the circumstances of one of North Carolina's oldest cold case. We uncovered significant new evidence in this case and put together the most coherent and likely theory about what happened in this case to date. And so it's a case that we also think really matters. And it's available through Amazon, Barnes and Noble. The audiobook is available through Apple iBooks and through Audible as well. So it's this was a big passion project and a case we continue to talk about to this day.
Yeah, and if you want a signed copy, we do have that available too. So just leave me a comment and I will let you know how to do that. Brian, do you want to tell them where you can find more information about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So Brian Santana author is where you can kind of find, I'm trying to become a lot better about updating this very regularly about what I'm working on. I'm currently in the midst of a book I'm under contract with the History Press. There we go. About the 1973 murder of Deborah Elizabeth Espy. This is a book I'm very proud of. It should be out in the next year. I'm working on it as we speak, but it is about a cold case from 1973 in Florida. And it's one that I had the cooperation of the police, the family of the accused, and who's responsible for this, and also the family of the victim as well. So it has a very unique perspective in that I have three very different diametrically opposed experiences and perspectives on that case.
Well, I'm looking forward to that one sincerely. We've done an episode on that, but we will do once the book comes out, because I don't want to spoil things. We will do some more episodes on that case because it is fascinating, especially how it is a cold case that happened around the same time as Virginia's, and
Yes.
it's one that's actually been solved, which is a great job by the investigators on that one. If you want to support the show, you can start off by liking and subscribing to Santana True Crime. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and other social media at Santana True Crime. Feel free to leave me a comment or send me a DM if you've got a case that you would like us to cover. Brian, thank you again, and good night.
Night, everyone.